This video is sponsored by Squarespace.
What if you could get jaw-dropping pro-level effects on your minis without spending hours painting? Today, I'm going to show you how to fake an advanced technique to make your models look insanely good in less than 10 minutes. This technique is called Object Source Lighting, or OSL. It's a method where you paint in a light source to create dynamic, vibrant effects. Usually, OSL requires balancing light intensity, considering light direction and how colors interact. All kinds of advanced stuff. But today, we're skipping the complicated parts and focusing on the fun, so you can create stunning miniatures quickly and easily. Alright, let's talk game plan. To keep this project simple but dramatic, I'm focusing almost entirely on the object source lighting. This laser focus is the entire crutch of this technique. The key to achieving that intense OSL effect is through zenithal highlighting. But here's the twist. Instead of applying light from above, I want my light to come from the ground, so I'll be dry brushing from the bottom of the model upward. Basically, the usual zenithal, but in reverse. Now for your project, choose where you want the light source to come from and prime your model accordingly. This could be from something the model is holding, like a sword or lantern, or it could be an off-screen spotlight. Applying this OSL in a unique direction will help your models look more dynamic and exciting. First things first, let's choose our OSL color. I'm going with a very bright, vibrant green. With that in mind, next is choosing our primer or base color. Traditionally, zenithal is done with a black base, but since this paint is all about the OSL, I'm going to push that contrast further and use a complementary color for my base color. And I don't mean nice colors. Complementary colors are across from each other on the color wheel, and they create the most contrast possible between hue. Basically, if you put complementary colors right next to each other, it really excites our brains, making us want to look. So, using a purple base with my green object source lighting is going to make the model look more interesting. If you wish to do the same on your model, look at the complementary color from your chosen OSL color and base your model in a deep, dark version of that color. Before we jump to painting, let's set up our tools for dry brushing. First, I recommend using a domed brush. A domed brush helps avoid streak marks and creates a smoother transition. Second, I recommend using a dampening sponge. You can learn about my DIY sponge here. I'm placing a drop of water into my sponge and then using my finger to disperse the water evenly through the sponge. Then I'm stamping my brush into the pad lightly. Using a slightly damp brush helps avoid the chalky, spotty texture that dry brushing can be known for. Now that my brush is damp, I'm rolling it into my paint, only loading the very front of my brush. Then I'm pulling it back and forth along a texture palette to remove any excess paint without removing moisture from the brush. Finally, I test it on my hand, looking for that cloud-like finish. Before we continue, let's talk about Squarespace, where designing a website is easier than ever. I'm so excited about their new Design Intelligence, which empowers anyone to build a beautiful custom website and digital identity using cutting-edge AI tools. Combine that with Squarespace Payments, the easiest way to manage all your transactions in one place, and of course, my favorite flexible design templates with drag and drop features, Squarespace is a no-brainer for creating your perfect website. When you're ready to start, head to squarespace.com for a free trial. And when you're ready to launch, use code LYLAMEV to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. All right, back to painting. I'm pulling the brush upwards from the base of the model towards the top of the model, using heavy pressure. getting softer as we come towards the top of the model to mimic how light gets dimmer as it travels away from the light source.
Whoops.
I'm pulling the brush across the entire model except for the very top parts like the head and shoulders, as they won't get hit by our underlight. Since this is our darker color, we do want to hit basically everything. We of course don't want to completely paint it gray, but we are going more heavy than a typical dry brush. But don't worry about hitting every tiny detail, we'll layer on more colors to refine it as we go. Next, we're switching to a medium gray. This time we're only brushing up about 3/4 of the model. You want to use a softer touch here, but with the same heavier pressure at the bottom that gets softer towards the top. Using a softer hand assures that we hit the raised details and not the inner crevices where we want our shadows. This is where dry brushing really starts to shine. The lighter the pressure, the more subtle the highlight. It's all about building up layers gradually. Now for the final highlight, white. We're focusing on the bottom half of the model, starting with heavier pressure at the feet and again lightening up as we move upwards. You can add as many layers as you need here. The goal is to get a nice vibrant white at the bottom. The brighter the white, the more intense the OSL will appear. As a side note, you could skip the gray steps altogether and go straight from black to white. But using more layers gives you a smoother, more controlled gradient. With our dry brushing done, it's time for the fun part, speed paints. Here I've chosen a very vibrant green. Choosing a bright color like this will really make the OSL pop. I'm using a dabbing motion to apply the paint across the entire model. This helps the paint sit naturally over the raised areas without pulling too much into the recesses. To keep the paint looking even, I'm pulling it up all the way to the top of the model, applying it even over areas that I painted my dark purple. Now to create a more natural OSL effect, we're adding a darker speed paint to the top half of the model. This will help darken down the shadows and create smoother transition between the glowing effect at the bottom and the original purple at the top. To help blend the two colors together, I'm lightly stamping my barely loaded brush of my darker color into random areas of my lighter color. Since the colors are so similar, they should blend together rather well, and the stamping means I won't have to worry about wet blending or feathering. Start slow and build up the gradient as you go. Lastly, I'm painting in the red lights near his head because I think it'll be a nice contrast. Let's talk base. I've created a simple base using sand and baking soda, then applying our dry brush steps, focusing our highlights towards the center of the base. The important thing is that the base is textured to allow your dry brushing to show through. I know that on my miniature there isn't really a source of the object source lighting, but I just want it to look cool, and it definitely does. If you have your OSL coming from someplace other than the ground below your miniature, feel free to just leave your base black or do a bit of dry brushing and your darker OSL color over top. And there you have it, a quick way to combine dry brushing and speed paints to create easy object source lighting. Imagine having an entire army painted like this. Your pieces would be so recognizable and look really impressive. You could even use different colors to highlight special characters or separate units among your factions while still creating a cohesive army. If you want to learn more about creating cohesive miniatures with a limited color palette, check out this video here to create easy, stunning miniatures. Alright, that's it for me. You know the drill. Like, comment, subscribe. Go join me on Patreon. Thanks so much. I'll see you next time.